Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. These are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. My name is Madhavananda Das. Today is a special day because we're starting, this is our 100th session. We've been doing this series called Meeting in Kuruksetra, and this is the 100th session of that. So we'll go ahead and say a few prayers to begin. Gora Graganya Gana Gotra Goloruhadam Gauranga Gudatama Gopyata Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naramschaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bhadate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Saivatra Giyate Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanga Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Dharma Projita Kaita Vota Paramoniam Atsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastava Matta Vastu Shivadam Chapatralam Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Krite Kim Vaparayishvara Sadjo Hridyavarudyate Tukiti Bishu Shushubistakshanat Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Artaika Sadhanam Krishnam Artan Brajajanam Shatan Cham Chatasrakam Bhaktam Artyavande Durasaya. I offer my vandana to Uddhava and to Krishna. Artaika Saranam Krishnam. Jiva Goswami writes this verse. He says, with a hopeless heart, with great sorrow, I take shelter of Krishna and offer my respects to him, because Artan Brajajanam Chatan, he's the only shelter for persons who are suffering and for the Brijbasis who are suffering. And I offer my pranams to Uddhava, who alleviated their suffering. So we want to look a little bit back. Our last session we spoke something for some devotees here in Puri about the significance of Jagannath Puri. But otherwise we've been trying to continue our sessions regularly. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this is our 100th session in the series of Meeting in Kuruksetra. So today we're continuing our talks from the 47th chapter of the 10th canto, which is at Brahma Gita. This is our 53rd session on Brahma Gita. And it's the 54th verse in Brahmara Gita. Uvasakata chinmasan gopinam vinudan suchaha Krishna-lila katam gayan ramayan asa gokulam. Sukadeva Goswami describes that Uddhava ubasa, basa means to stay, ubasa katachid masan. Uddhava stayed for some months in Braj. And by so doing, Gopinam vidudan suchaha. He dispelled, he drove away the unhappiness, the misery of the gopis. And how did he do that? Krishna-lila katam gayan. By speaking Braj-lila. It's described in the first canto of the Bhagavatam that shoka moha bhayapaha. 3 external symptoms are there of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. That shok, moha, and bhaya. Your lamentation, your illusion, and your fear will all be driven away. So the topmost example of this is the gopis of Braj, and how they their lamentation and illusion was driven away. I'm speaking right now. I don't know if our volume is loud enough. If anybody who's watching this, maybe you can post something, Bindu Sundari or Sarvajik Prabhu or someone, let me know if the sound is okay. So Uddhava gave life to them, he gave happiness to them, as the gopis described in Gopi Gita, Tava Katamrita Tapta Jivanam, that by hearing Krishna Katha, the suffering of the living entity goes away. And this is a most important purpose. Srila Prabhupada writes in one place in Krishna book, he said, this is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement, to create a facility for people to come together to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We were contemplating this topic recently, and how sometimes we observe festivals, we have rituals, we have abhisheks, we have fire yagyas, we have parades and different things. But the essence of all those things is to develop Katha Ruchi. And if we don't develop Katha Ruchi, then Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. Whatever other activities that you're doing are just a waste of time. So I want to look back a little bit on our previous session where we spoke about the special, amazing significance of Uddhava. In this verse it says that Uddhava, Ramayam Asa Gokulam, he brought happiness. Ramayam, he brought happiness, joy, to all the residents of Gokul. And actually the very word Uddhava means someone who gives joy and pleasure. The word Uddhava also means a festival or holiday. So Krishna's messenger has the best name. And in general, that's the principle of Krishna's message in the form of Krishna Katha. It gives joy to the world. My Guru Maharaj, he once said that Krishna Katha is all attractive. Who won't be attracted by Krishna Katha? So if devotees leave our movement, he was speaking this thing in Spain in 1994, he said if someone leaves, then we should understand that there's something wrong with the Krishna Katha. So, because otherwise Krishna Katha attracts everyone. So in session 99, we spoke something about Uddhava. Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he mentions an interesting name of Uddhava. One of his names is Pavanavyadi. Pavanavyadi means someone who has an air disease. It means a kind of madness also. Mahaprabhu, when he returned from Gaya, they thought that he had this Pavanavyadi, he had this kind of madness. Uddhava has this name because from childhood he was mad with Krishna Prem. So this is one of his names, and this is his qualification. And we hear also, both from Kavi Karnapur in his Gaura-lila Dipika, and in the lesser known book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Gaura-gana-swarup Tattva Chandrika, about the position of Uddhava in Gaura-lila. Kavi Karnapur says, Puri Paramanando Ya Asid Uddhava Pura. That Uddhava became Paramananda Puri. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says the same thing. Uddhava Krishna Maintriya Paramananda Eva Saha. That Uddhava, who was Krishna's mantri, who was his minister, he became Paramananda Puri. Lochandas Thakur, in Chaitanya Mangal, he offers his pranams to Uddhava in his Sutra Kanda, the second song, in the following words. Puri Jai Paramananda Ar Vishnu Puri Gadadhara Dasa Jai Mandaiva Sirupari. He says that these two personalities, or these three personalities, Paramananda Puri, Vishnu Puri, and Gadadhar Das, I take their feet on my head, and Paramananda, I offer my vandana to them, to Paramananda Puri, Vishnu Puri, and Gadadhar Das. Paramananda Puri, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, is one of the 9 roots of the Chaitanya tree. And that's a very interesting thing. That tree, Madhavendra Puri, is sometimes described as that tree. And Paramananda Puri and these 9 sannyasi associates of Mahaprabhu, Paramananda Puri, Kesha Bharati, Brahmananda Puri, Brahmananda Bharati, Vishnu Puri, Kesha Puri, Krishnananda Puri, and Sringatirtha, and Sukhananda Puri. They were the 9 sannyasi roots of this tree. And Paramananda Puri is famous as a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And we heard a little something also in our previous session from Lochandas Thakur, that as soon as he left Rangaji in South India, Mahaprabhu met Paramananda Puri at that time in South India. And they were exchanging loving feelings by looking at each other. And Paramananda Puri then remembered Madhavendra Puri, and how Madhavendra Puri, before they left, Madhavendra Puri quoted a verse to him from Vayu Purana. Kale pratama sanjayam lakshmikanto bhavishyati daru brahma samipasta sannyasa gora vigraha. Very beautiful verse. Is often quoted by our acharyas as a verse, an example of a verse from the Puranas which predict Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it said that Kali Pratama Sandhyayam, in the beginning, in the Pratama Sandhya, the beginning of Kali Yuga, Lakshmi Kanta Bhavishyati, Lord Narayan, who's Lakshmi Kanta, the Lord of Lakshmi Deva, Bhavishyati, he'll appear on earth. And he'll come as a sannyasi, Gaura Vigraha, in a golden form. He'll take sannyas, and he's going to live Daru Brahma Samipasta. He'll stay close to that Daru Brahma, Lord Jagannath and Purushottam Ketu, Jagannath Puri. Right? And Madhavendra Puri told Paramananda Puri, Kali Juga Sankirtana Dharma Ratibhari Janami Ba Krishna Pratama Sandhyaya Bitare. That in Kali Yuga, the Sankirtan Dharma Ratibhari, to teach Sankirtan Dharma, Krishna himself is going to appear Pratama Sanjaya Bitari. He's going to appear early one evening. And we mentioned in our last session whether that's literal, that this was the time when Paramananda Puri met with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the early evening, or if it indicates that the early evening of Kali Yuga. It may have some other significance. And he described then the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how he's going to distribute mercy everywhere. And then Madhavendra Puri told Paramananda Puri, Mora bhagya nahi. He said, I have no bhagya, I have no good fortune. Why? Mui deki banoyini. Because I won't be able to see him. He says, but Tora deka. Hoile more karye smani. If you're fortunate enough to see Gauranga Mahaprabhu, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to remember me. And we commented this in our last session. I want to just touch on it again. It really touches my heart. This is a relationship between Guru and disciple. Gurudev is that person who's Taraka. He's a deliverer of the disciple. But Gurudev is much, much more than that. Prahlad Maharaj, he describes, Narad Muni tells Prahlad Maharaj that Gurudev is that personality who's a very, very intimate friend. And here we see in such a sweet way, a similar statement is made by Srila Prabhupada also in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam. He says that sometimes the disciple is more advanced than the guru. And he says in the same way that Dhruva Maharaj was a disciple of his mother, but he delivered his mother. So in the same way he said, I hope that I may have one disciple who may deliver me. And his humility speaking like that. But here Madhavendra Puri is speaking that he's telling Paramananda Puri that if you're fortunate enough to see Gauranga Mahaprabhu, then please remember me. So the relationship between the guru and disciple, from this we see it's very intimate. It's not just a formal thing, but there's a loving exchange there. And it's not just that oh, Gurudev is that person, I just depend on him. But there's a friendship there. And the disciples also may serve Gurudev. Just as we hear also that Ishvara Puri, he served Madhavendra Puri in such a sweet way. And how was he serving him? By remembering Krishna. He was taking care of his body, cleaning his stool and urine, but he was also chanting Krishna's names. And that gave so much pleasure and happiness to Madhavendra Puri. So Paramananda Puri realized that this personality is the same person that my Guru Maharaj spoke to me about. And at that time, Paramananda Puri, then he fell down on the ground and offered obeisances to the Lord. And Mahaprabhu said, what are you doing? And he picked him up. In the Murari Gupta's Chaitanya Charit Mahakabya, a book which was appreciated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the same description is given more or less, that Mahaprabhu, when he left Rangaketra, he met Paramananda Puri. And when Paramananda Puri met Mahaprabhu, Kavi Karnapur, Murari Gupta, and his Chaitanya Charit Mahakabya, says the same thing, that Paramananda Puri remembered Madhavendra Puri's words. And tears came to his eyes and his body became filled with ecstatic symptoms. And then at that time, Murari Gupta describes Ishvarapi Puri Pada Sabritya Dharma Palakaha Nanama Paramo Prito Dandavat Sirasa Bhuvi. That at that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although he's Britya Dharma Palaka, he's that personality who's a protector, Dharma Palaka, of religious principles. At that time, Ishwari Puris Pada Sabritya, he offered his obeisances to that disciple, that godbrother of his Guru Maharaj, Ishvara Puri, along with Paramananda Puri's servant. And by doing this, he established, he became Dharma Palaka, or he showed himself to be Dharma Palaka, to be the preserver of proper Dharma. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes Sanatana Goswami as being the embodiment of Vaishnava Dharma, because he avoided even touching the shadow of the Pandas here in Puri. So the Vaishnavas, sometimes we may think, oh, this is not such a big thing, this is just some external etiquette or something. But the Vaishnavas, they preserve that etiquette, they preserve the essence of that. And Mahaprabhu at that time, Dandavat Sirasa Bhuvi, Murari Gupta says, he put his feet at the head of Paramananda Puri. This is a very interesting thing. Paramananda Puri at that time, he said, no, what are you doing? This is not right. You shouldn't do this thing. He said, you're Bhagavan Sri Krishna. He told him that time, Gyata Sri Bhagavan Sakshat. You're directly Bhagavan himself, Sri Krishna Bhakta Rupa Drik. You're Sri Krishna, but now Bhakta Rupa Drik. You've assumed the form of a devotee. Shri Radha Bhavam Apano, Madhurja Rasa Lampata. And we mentioned this in our last session, that you've accepted this form of a devotee because you want to taste Radha Bhav. Now, this is a very amazing thing. This is long before Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami and Chaitanya Charitamrita described how Mahaprabhu is Radha Bhava Duti Suvali Tam Nomi Krishna Surupam. It's long before Srup Damodar Goswami wrote any verses describing like this. How does Paramananda Puri know this? Because he's heard from Madhavendra Puri. And Madhavendra Puri is considered to be the root or the trunk of the Chaitanya tree. And Paramananda Puri is his disciple. So it's very interesting that in Krishna Lila, that same Paramananda Puri is Uddhava, and Uddhava's hearing from Srimati Radharani. And then after hearing and seeing the mood of Srimati Radharani, he's learning from her not just by her words, but also by her behavior in this Brahma Ragit. Then he goes back to Krishna, and Krishna learns from that. He hears from Uddhava. So that same Uddhava now in Gaura-lila has become a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, and thereby understanding the mood of Srimati Radharani. And now he's meeting with Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and he's helping him to relish the mood of Radha. So then Mahaprabhu told him, Gacha Chaitya Maharamya. The same thing is spoken in the 46th chapter, more or less, of the 10th canto, where Krishna says, Gachota Uddhava Somya. He uses the same word, Gachot, that you go. Krishna told Uddhava in Mathura, now you go, dear Somya, dear gentle Uddhava, you go to Vrindavan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells the same thing to that same personality, who's now come as Paramananda Puri, Gacha Chaitya Maharamya. When in the 46th chapter of the 10th canto, Krishna tells Uddhava, you go to Vrindavan. Now in Murari Gupta says that Mahaprabhu, when he met the same Uddhava, Paramananda Puri, he used the same word, Gacha, that you go. And whereas Krishna told him to go to Vrindavan, Mahaprabhu told him, Chaitya Maharamya. You go to Jagannath Puri, which is that place which is Maharamya, a very, very sweet, very delightful place. Because there in that place, you're going to taste Radha Bhav. And Mahaprabhu told him, you go there and stay there, and later I'll meet with you there. And according to Lochan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Mangal, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Uddhava stayed with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for some time in the Gambhira. So Uddhava was privy for that Gambhira Lila, when that pastime of where Mahaprabhu or Krishna himself is tasting the mood of Srimati Radharani. So I'd like to continue a little more now. That was more or less a review of our previous session, kind of catch things up. Looking again at this verse, this 54th verse of the 47th chapter, 10th canto, Uvasakata Chinmasan Gopinam Vinudan Suchaha Krishna Lila Gatam Gayam Ramayam Asa Gokulam. The same word is used here, Ramya, that Murari Gupta describes, that Mahaprabhu told to Uddhava, that he told Uddhava that you go and you stay in Jagannath Puri, and that Gacha Chaitya Maharamya, that place which is very, very sweet, and I'm going to go there. Just as Krishna told Uddhava to go to Vrindavan, and just as in this 54th verse, in speaking about Vrindavan, how Uddhava Ramayam Asa Gokulam, he gave sweetness and happiness to the residents of Gokul by speaking Krishna Katha to them. So I'd like to look a little bit now at some of our Acharya's commentaries on this particular verse. And it's the Artha Darshani commentary. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the Gopis were feeling so distraught and so disturbed, so sad in separation from Krishna, that they were beginning to think that Krishna wasn't going to return. And they were feeling very, very depressed about that. And they were thinking to give up their lives. And as we've mentioned, there's some elaborate commentaries in this chapter, which we touched on before, in this 47th chapter, and also in the 19th chapter of the Anchal Lila of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, which speak about dasa dasa, or the 10 different symptoms of the fourth state of Vipralambha. There's four different types of Vipralambha, and the fourth of which is known as Prabhas. Prabhas means when Krishna goes to a distant place. Two types of Prabhas, Dura and Sudura Prabhas. Dura Prabhas means when Krishna goes to Kamyavan or something like that, and the gopis can't see him for a few hours. Sudara Prabhas is when Krishna goes to Mathura Dwarka. And that's the most intense separation. It's also known as Mathura Prabhas or Mathura Viraha or Dwarka Prabhas or Dwarka Viraha. And there's 10 different symptoms of that separation, and the last of which is mrityu, or death. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is alluding to that here, that the gopis had come to this point. So this is the height of their ecstasy when Uddhava is meeting them. And Uddhava at that time, they were going to give up their lives, but Uddhava gave them life. Tavakatamrita tapta jivanam. He gave them life by speaking. And Vishwanath mentions that Uddhava, in the previous verse, text 53, Shukadeva Goswami describes Tatastha Krishna Sandeshyar, that Uddhava spoke these things, and he uses the word tatas. Tatas means, Vishwanath says that there's some significance of this word, that then, after that, he spoke something. Now this text 53, Shukadeva Goswami is summarizing now. He says, Uddhava spoke all these things. But he says, tatas, after that, he spoke something else. And this is Krishna's secret message to the gopis. Sukadeva Goswami, Vishwanath says, he didn't specifically describe those messages. He says, but by the word tatas, that he spoke some things after that, we can understand the messages were there, and we can understand the messages, he says, by the results that they had on the gopis. A very important thing. Krishna Katha is not just some empirical information that we collect. But Krishna therefore says in the Gita that Raja Vidya, this Krishna Katha is the topmost knowledge, Raja Guyam, it's the most confidential thing. And Pratyak Savagamam Dharmyam, it's meant to be practically experienced. It's not just some theoretical thing. So we're seeing this particular point here. And in that 53rd verse, the previous verse, the word adhoksaja is used. And we'll see some of our commentaries of our acharyas, how they give different meanings to this word adhoksaja. Usually adhoksaja means the Supreme Lord. Anyway, Vishwanath goes on, that Krishna is telling the gopis now something further. This is at the tush, the further message which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur brings out. That Krishna tells the gopis something secret, because there may be some other personalities sitting and listening. So Sukadeva Goswami, seeing that some of the rishis who are there, they're not qualified to hear this, he says tatas, and he packs something into this. The Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarvashoy Prati Shloke Prati Akshri Nanatakoi, that just as Krishna's Vibhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so also is the Bhagavatam. And Prati Shloke Prati Akshri, every verse, every syllable of the Bhagavatam has unlimited meanings. But we have to hear from someone who's actually realized it, because Prema Moyi Bhagavat Krishna Rashriyanga, Chaitanya Bhagavat describes that the Bhagavatam is made out of Krishna Prema, and it's part of the body of Krishna. And therefore, Sup Damodar Goswami describes that Jaho Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavarastani, we should go and hear from a devotee, the Bhakta Bhagavat, about Bhagavatam. So we want to hear Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explaining this one word, tatas. Then, what tatas means. He says that Krishna then began to tell the gopis, my dear gopis, some message which is not even indirectly indicated by Shukadeva Goswami, but not directly spoken. My dear gopis, you're as dear to me as life. Uvasa katachin masan gopinam vindana suchaha. That Krishna, Uddhava is staying there, Sukadeva Goswami said, he dispelled the gopis' sorrow. But indirectly, Sukadeva Goswami is saying that Krishna is saying that you're as dear to me as my life. And you're standing here now in front of my messenger, Uddhava. And I want you to do something, Krishna said. I want all of you to close your eyes. Bhaktivedanta always makes a very nice point sometimes. He says, when we chant japa, close your eyes, if you can, because our eyes are the doorways to the consciousness, and so many, many things come in. And of course, sometimes we close our eyes and something else happens. We go to sleep. But try to close your eyes when you chant japa. And Krishna told this to the gopis. He said, you're standing now in front of my messenger Uddhava. I want you to close your eyes, just like I told the cowherd boys previously, to close their eyes. And I would deliver them from the forest fire. So you close your eyes, and I'm going to deliver you from the devastating fire of my separation. And in the same way that I showed my mystic power to the cowherd boys by delivering from that forest fire, I'm going to show my mystic power now by delivering you from the forest fire of separation. So when the gopis heard that, tatas, the secret message that was there, Krishna's secret message to them, the gopis all closed their eyes. And in 1 second, then Yoga Maya, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, compressed millions of years of time into one single moment. And Krishna appeared at that place. And in the company of the gopis, he began to enjoy the Ras-lila. Oh, Krishna. Hare Krishna. So I'm sorry, we have our internet connection dropped, and then somehow it doesn't let me go back to Facebook again. So we were speaking about this word tatas in the 53rd verse of the 47th chapter, and how Vishwanath gives this wonderful explanation that Krishna gave a secret message to the gopis. He told them that close your eyes, just in the same way that I told the cowherd boys to close their eyes, and by my mystic power I saved them from the forest fire. You close your eyes standing in front of Uddhava, and I'm going to deliver you from the forest fire of separation. Just watch my mystic power. And at that time, then the gopis closed their eyes, and Yoga Maya compressed millions of years of time into a single moment. In the Gita, Krishna says, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Maharyad Brahmano Vidu, that 1,000 ages taken together is one night of Lord Brahma. And that one night of Lord Brahma was the duration of the Ras-lila. So therefore Vishnu says that Yoga Maya compressed millions of years of time in a single moment. And there, in front of Uddhava, suddenly Krishna appeared with the gopis. And they started enjoying all the different activities of the Ras-lila, playing dice and drinking honey liquor and playing in the water and swinging on swings in the forest. And in all those different pastimes in the gopis, they forgot their pangs of separation. And Uddhava was watching them, and he saw that suddenly the gopis became ecstatic. Their eyes are closed, but they become ecstatic. And Uddhava paused them for a moment. And then Uddhava told them now, dear ladies, now open your eyes. And so the gopis opened their eyes, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that they felt like they'd taken a new birth, and they got their ecstasy increased thousands and thousands of times, and they recognized Uddhava then as being non-different from Krishna. And at this point, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, looking back at the 53rd verse, and I mentioned this word adhoksaja. Adhoksaja means the Supreme Lord. But Vishwanath gives another meaning to the word adhoksaja at that time, that they recognize Uddhava as being adhoksaja, non-different from Krishna, and they worshipped him. And Vishwanath says that, gives another meaning to the word adhoksaja, that ado, in the word adhoksaja means downward, ada, and aksha also means eyes, and ja means birth. So the gopis' eyes, looking downward this way, opening up, their eyes took birth again, and they recognized, they saw Uddhava as being non-different from Krishna. And this again, as we've commented many times in this pastime of Uddhava carrying Krishna's message, the messenger means Krishna, it means Guru. Uddhava is a guru. He's bringing this thing. And Uddhava then becomes a guru for Krishna, and he becomes a guru for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he comes as Paramananda Puri, to teach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu what the mood of the gopis is. And so there's this deep connection between Krishna's leaving Vrindavan, going to Mathura, and pastimes in Dwarka, and the meeting in Kuruksetra, and the pastimes in Jagannath Puri with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Krishna told the gopis then at this time, Vishwanath says, he says, my dear ladies, you are filled with prema. If you give up your lives, because they were thinking to do that, then I'm also going to give up my life when I hear that news. So don't doubt this. I swear, Krishna says 1,000 times over, that you are my very life. And Krishna says, even though I'm trying to go to Braj at every moment, I can't do so. And maybe I'm being kept here because the time is not right. Or maybe because the love the Mathura Basis have for me is such an obstacle. And by speaking like this, tatas, this word is given there, the Krishna's secret message is there. By hearing this, the gopis' fever of separation, viraha jvara, that was caused by their thinking that Krishna had no love for them, that was a real cause of their pain, their fever. They're thinking Krishna doesn't love us, Krishna doesn't care for us. Now they saw, no, Krishna does love us. And vyapeta, the verse describes vyapeta, that it was removed. Now he's looking back again at this 53rd verse. This vyapeta means it removed virahajvara, or the fever of separation. That virahajvara, Vishwanath says, indicates the gopis feeling that Krishna, it's not just a fire of separation, but thinking that Krishna doesn't love us. So then they understand that atmana atma tulyam. They understand that in the same way that we're suffering, Krishna's also suffering. Or another meaning, they're understanding that Krishna is their very life, and therefore the gopis began to worship Uddhava. And the gopis then, Vishwanath says, they tell Uddhava, Uddhava, you've spoken very well. Now, even though we're suffering the greatest pain, now we're going to stay alive. Because we understand that if we die, then Krishna's going to suffer. We can't tolerate that. And if you hadn't given this message, certainly we would have died and everything would have been destroyed. So by saving us, you fulfilled our desire to protect Krishna. And though we worship you. And Vishwanath says that there's an external meaning, that the gopis recognize their own souls, Atmanam, as one with the Supreme Lord. But that external meaning is given just to bewilder the demons, the impersonalists. And he says that's not the real meaning. It's just like, he says, it's like the Mohini Murti incarnation of the Lord. She's doing one thing. She's smiling at all the demons and ignoring the demigods. But behind her back, she's actually giving nectar to all the demigods. So in the same way, Krishna is saying this word Atmanam, this verse is saying Atmanam, Sukadeva Goswami is saying, that understanding that you're not different from me. But that's being spoken just to bewilder the demons. But for the Premi Bhakta, to become one with the Lord is repulsive, rather kaivalyam, not akashitam. It's considered to be like hell itself, to become one with the Lord. The gopis, they don't want that. They don't desire that. Jiva Goswami, in his Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, he explains that the gopis' unhappiness and sorrow was almost completely dispelled by Krishna's promise when he said, Ayesha, that I'm going to return. And then by entering into Krishna's eternal pastimes to the perception of the mind and thinking that his spurti was his direct presence. So these three verses describe that. And I think I want to stop here. In our next session, we want to speak about another meaning of the word tatas, which Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Vaishnava Toshani brings out, that Krishna gave a secret message to the trees and plants and the animals of Braj, and the meaning of that. And we'd like to speak something in that session about the importance of the Braj trees. So I'm going to stop here, If anybody has any reflections, anything they'd like to share, we have a few devotees, Sarvadrik Prabhu and Vinit and Binda Sundari and Gautam. A few devotees here with us, quite a few actually. I'm very sorry, I don't know, I'd probably have to reboot my computer or something. It's really crazy. So if anybody has any reflections or comments you'd like to share with what we were speaking today, we can go ahead and have that. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and stop. Arjun Sakha Prabhu, do you have any reflection?
May I ask?
Yeah. You just flip this camera around.
I really appreciate this analogy between this studying Krishna from how Krishna started from Uddhava and Paramananda Puri studied from Madhavendra Puri. And my question is, who is Madhavendra Puri? Gaura-lila.
Okay. I've never been satisfied with what, let me look it up here real quick, with the comments from our acharyas about the identity of Madhavendra Puri. Srila Kavi Kanipur in his Gaura-lila Dipika, he says that Madhavendra Puri is the root of the tree of Chaitanya, and therefore some devotees, they say that he's a Kalpabriksha tree, he's a tree. But that's not such a satisfying thing, because generally we consider trees to be in Shantaras. But Madhavendra Puri, so I personally, I've not seen any commentaries on that, and I've been very interested to look for commentaries on that. The closest commentary I find to it is this description by Murari Gupta in Chaitanya Charit Mahakavya, where Uddhava recognizes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as being in the mood of Radha, and he recognizes that because of his Guru Maharaj, Madhavendra Puri. So that gives us some clue that Madhavendra Puri must be in Madhurja Ras. And that's all that I can comment on that. But I'm just, other than to say that I've not been satisfied with trying to say that Madhavendra Puri is a tree, even to say it's a Kalpabriksha tree. He is a Kalpabriksha tree in the same way that we say Vancha Kalpataru Bhischa, that the Vaishnavas are Kalpataru also. He's a devotee, and he's a Maha Kalpabriksha tree in the sense that he's fulfilling the desire of the supreme devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Have you any thoughts on that? Okay. Anybody else want to share anything? Or we'll go ahead and stop there. Brinda Sundari, if you have anything, or Sarvadrik Prabhu, anybody? Okay. All right, thank you all very much. I'm sorry that we had all these internet problems and stuff today. I'm going to upload this, I think, 2 parts of this talk today. So next session, we're going to speak something more about Krishna's secret message to the trees. He gave a message to the trees and plants of Braj. Very nice thing. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpataru Bhischa.